I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Adam Cai, the CEO of Virgo. Adam, welcome back to the show, and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you, Ashton, for having me again.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure having you on over the past years, because you really have the Canadian crypto scene and the Canadian crypto exchanges industry nailed down to a T. It seems like you and your team are always on top of it, and I'm excited to hear about the latest updates with Virgo and the exchange, as well as just the Canadian crypto landscape. So I would love to start off our conversation, for those who haven't seen our previous interviews, with just a high level on what you and your team are working on at Virgo, and then we'll dive into all the details.
Sure. So Virgo Group was actually founded back in 2019. We started off as a crypto spot exchange providing Canadian dollar fiat on-ramp and off-ramp for the Canadian users. And starting actually from last year, we expanded our exchange to Australia, and we were able to launch our Australian branch since 2022 October, and we also rebranded our Virgo CX group to become Virgo, and our newly official website is virgo.co, which will be actually our global company going forward that will contains all kind of different subsidiaries within it. In addition to the Australian expansion, we also are working at US and Hong Kong as well, trying to see whether we can provide crypto spot exchange services over there as well. And in addition to just the spot exchange, we also recently expanded into the crypto asset management space. We recently acquired Axonomy Investment, a fully licensed investment manager, portfolio manager, example market leader in Canada. That does give us the ability to offer crypto private fund, crypto separate managed accounts, as well as crypto public fund in the very near future. So we're now becoming a more kind of integrated, comprehensive crypto financial service providers.
Wow, that's great to hear, Adam. And it's always nice when you hear that a crypto exchange is expanding, vertically and throughout different jurisdictions around the world. That's a good sign for crypto as a whole. Now, 2023 has been an interesting year for Bitcoin so far. And in the last month, we've sort of seen, Bitcoin's barely moved. It's been 30,000, which can't complain compared to the past years. It's a high price, but it seems like sideways movement and not a lot of people interested, maybe just because it's summer. Usually crypto exchange founders have a good hold on what's happening with Bitcoin, or at least the trading volumes on their exchange. And do they see interest peaking year over year, month over month? Do you have any insights into the current market conditions of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency industry as a whole right now?
The current market condition, I think it's a very interesting one. So from the retail trading side, I wouldn't say that the retail investors have come back the way trying to invest heavily into crypto. I don't see that trend yet, probably because of the high interest rate situation. People just put their money back in their bank account, and also they have to fight for the inflation and also the rising living costs. So I think the risk appetite on the retail investors back to crypto is still limited at this point in time. However, we do see the price went back from as low as $16,000 to over $30,000. I think that's mainly because of a couple of reasons. One is we're seeing obviously some big, I guess asset management companies and institutions now announcing big plans to get into crypto ETF plays, such as BlackRock, Fidelity, these big players. So that does actually boost confidence that in the near future, if things get approved, we're going to have way more asset flow into crypto. So that does, increase the confidence within, for the crypto investor within the industry. And also the fact that we don't have that much bad news lately, it's also something that's going to play on the positive side. In 2022, everyone knows it's pretty crazy with one after another black swan event, one after another collapse for the major crypto ecosystem players. But it has been quiet down toward the end of 2022 and going into 2023. So we're seeing less of that. So that does actually give the market a bit of time to recover from, the disaster mode back in the years.
Definitely. And it's a great point about the Canadian landscape for retail investors. the inflation and the cost of living, it seems like Canada is, at least Toronto and Vancouver, it's like that one of the highest costs of living throughout all of North America. It's hard for regular people to have any extra income to start investing in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies for the long term when they're just trying to pay the rent.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And on the institutional side, you mentioned there that a lot of positives about the ETF filings, BlackRock, some of these major institutions that they're usually working behind closed doors, probably buying up lots of Bitcoin when it's low, when the retail traders can't afford to. I'm curious on a lot of that you hear is sort of on the American side. I'm curious if you have any insights into the Canadian landscape specifically, and is there, on the institutional side, is there just as much interest? And obviously it's going to be not as large as America, but are the big institutions also, are you in discussions with them about, are they buying Bitcoin for the long term, and is this a positive thing for Canada?
Right. I think from the Canadian perspective, first thing we have advantage is the regulatory oversight. So I would say in general, the Canadian security regulators have to be have been relatively open to innovations, right? And they approved crypto ETF way before US did, and they also give some clear guidance in terms of what you can do on crypto asset management, private fund wise, what you can do on a crypto trading platform wise, and what you have to get yourself compliant. So I think they're trying pretty hard in providing that clarity. So that does add quite a bit of, I would say, confidence into the Canadian institutions, or Canadian like financial advisors, investment advisors, broker dealers, trying to get access potentially to crypto, because we now have a much better regulatory framework than what US does, right? So I think the general sense from the regulatory perspective is like it's definitely moving things along. Obviously, it has some kind of obstacles. There's some limitations on what you cannot do, which sometimes is also a little bit frustrating. But in general speaking, I think it's pretty good. So when we were in Canada, I think now people recognize that Canadian major ecosystem players from the centralized governance piece have been proving its, I guess, validity, and also proving that it does have a proper governance structure. So the trust that we lost from FTX collapse was potentially able to get back through all those regulatory movements. So I'm definitely seeing that there are some I would say small institutions and hand-out individuals now are definitely looking to put some capital back to Bitcoin for the long term. And people seem to have some, optimistic stance toward, what's going to happen after Bitcoin halving. Even though we don't see like huge, I guess, pension plan or like, family office putting, multi-hundred million dollars or billions of dollars, we're still seeing smaller ticket size. But within the current market liquidity, and considering all these macro conditions, I would still consider this as a very positive sign. And hopefully, Virgo one day we're actually in the process of getting ourselves also registered with RRock as broker dealer. We're hoping that early next year we can get a broker dealer license as well, so that will connect us a lot more with the advisor channel, and that should help us a lot.
Very interesting insights, Adam. And from the Canadian crypto exchange side, I've seen over the past year or a few years a consolidation of exchanges being bought up, acquired, merging together. It seems like there's fewer now than there was. I'm curious on your insights into that, being one of the biggest crypto exchanges in Canada. What's going on with the consolidation of exchanges there?
Sure. Yeah, this is actually, I guess, pretty much expected. For the bearish market that we have been experiencing the last 1 to 2 years, obviously the trading volumes on the exchange side has been going down significantly. So in order to survive in such a market, it obviously isn't easy for the trading platform business, right? So I guess within the Canadian landscape, we're seeing a number of our peers now trying to consolidate into one, and there are constant, acquisition and merge kind of discussion here and there. So I think the main reasoning behind it is obviously people want to survive, and people want to have synergies because of the merge, and people want to have a better runways, trying to get through into the next bullish cycle. I think that's kind of the main reason behind it. And of course, like there's no point to have that many exchanges in Canada anyway, right? So I think from our side, our decision is a little bit different. So instead of merging or consolidating with horizontal, I would say with similar business nature peers, we're more interested in doing a vertical integration. And we were lucky to be able to have, the investor support and have our shareholder support to be able to now looking at, very good assets, such as, the recent acquisition we did with Norman. That's a very legit asset management company. We have full vision that we can grow the AUM and provide the services to a number of investors in Canada to begin with and potential globally in the future. So, and also we're also seeing a lot of other, Canadian players doing some other, I guess, business lines such as STO, securitized tokens, right? And some people doing that, could be specifically doing, I guess, like the distribution channel on the community building side. So we're also looking at whether we can actually including, different players into our ecosystem that can add values to each other, so that we can be like more vertically integrated. I think, one way or another, the consolidation is happening.
I think it's a great approach, and I feel like there's a balance because having too many exchanges, they all have low liquidity. It's not going to be good for the industry. But if there's only one exchange, there needs to be healthy competition, and you can't, what if you want to have an option and you have to go with one option? So I feel like there needs to be a balance between, not having too many exchanges, but not just having one.
Correct. 100%.
Yeah. Now, you've spoken a bunch about the vertical integrations and expansions and mergers. I feel like this is a great sign for Virgo and just for the Canadian crypto landscape as well. It just shows a healthy sign that you're not one of those exchanges that's being forced to be acquired by some other group because you're struggling to get users or trading. So congratulations so far on that. What else can you tell me about what are the next steps and the strategy behind vertically integrating and expanding out to specific jurisdictions and how Virgo Group is growing?
Sure. I think from our side, obviously to be only a Canadian exchange wouldn't be enough because Canadian market is good, but it's also small in a sense. So obviously in terms of the region wise, for this year and the next year, we'll be focusing on Australia, United States for a few states, but obviously not for across all US. But we're going to picking a few states such as California, Texas, Florida, things like that. And also, we are also focusing on Hong Kong, and hopefully we can also bring the Asian perspective to our group that we can be able to connect from the west to the east and making the blockchain ecosystem truly global. Because we did actually see there were some disconnect between the Asian counterparties and the Western counterparties, especially after all those disaster happens. I think the disconnect becomes wider. I think there needs to be some ecosystem players to be able to connect that. So that's the region focus. And in terms of the business line side, obviously we are, I mentioned we're definitely interested in crypto asset management, private public fund. That's definitely in the line. And we're also looking to whether we can enable blockchain technology to fulfill the security token rail, so that we can fractionize real world assets. So actually the real world asset has been a very popular topic recently. To bring real world asset on chain is also certainly a trend. So I think that's something we're also looking at as well.
Yeah, it's interesting with the United States and the way that you guys have to take small steps to get in there. It's like there's only certain states that you can go into, and it just seems like a lot of regulatory scrutiny around the U.S. as a whole, and crypto exchanges creating separate entities and only being able to work in certain ways. I feel like that connection that you're talking about with Hong Kong and the Southeast Asian exchange movement, there's a few large Southeast Asian exchanges. You'd probably know better than me on what the volumes look like. But from what I understand, the population is huge. They're very interested in trading. I feel like that would be a great move and expansion, probably a much bigger market than Canada for Virgo.
Correct. We also strongly believe that, to be able to funnel the Asian investors, users into a truly globalized platform, it's also going to be helpful for them as well, because we can provide the safety, the trust they would need after seeing all these collapse, right? So I think this is what in exchange from Canada would actually be able to provide, is because we're fully regulated, we're fully trustworthy. So this part of the component will becoming a much bigger, influencer factor when it comes to the user selections to which provider platform they're using. It's not only about how much return what token I can trade. It's also about whether the principal I had over there is going to be safe, right, over time.
Yeah, definitely. And now looking forward, in terms of the cryptocurrency markets and Bitcoin itself, I'm expecting eventually that Bitcoin is going to rise back in price. There'll be a lot of more retail interest, and the trading volumes will increase significantly. I think it's a matter of when, not if. What are your insights or your predictions into when will that be happening? One of the significant events coming up is the Bitcoin Halving, which is less than a year away in spring of 2024. Are you optimistic about the market thriving around that time, or do you have any other insights into what else might be happening in the future?
Yeah, for sure. Like, this is a very big event that every ecosystem players, or like just a normal users, would be actually looking at. So I think in industry consensus, like obviously there's no guarantee the history will replicate the future, but industry consensus is definitely, after the halving, there could be some positive price movements. And maybe like just instead of predicting where the Bitcoin might sit, but if you look at the past 3 rounds of the Bitcoin halving, so typically, the high of the price in the past happens somewhere around 1 year after the halving, right? So we're probably looking at 2024 as kind of where actually the top could appear if, like, let's say if the historical would replicate, but also not let alone just halving part. We're also seeing very positive Bitcoin ecosystem building, right? Like I remember, like, when I was attending the Bitcoin Miami earlier this year spring. So there's a lot of Bitcoin ecosystem development, such as ordinal Bitcoin inscriptions, and people want to build some DAX out of Bitcoin. I'm still not sure like how that's going to be really possible, considering that 10 minutes for the confirmation time. But people are actually working pretty hard to building applications on that. Even though the attraction they made so far is so much smaller than Ethereum network, but still that does empower Bitcoin a bit more. And also I think people are now thinking, what else, like, what else can be there, like after Bitcoin ecosystem can be developed, will be able to attract more value, like more assets to be locked on blockchain network. We have yet to see, right? So I think the next cycle, it has to come from some particular narratives, and we're still waiting for that narrative to be very obvious. But Bitcoin ecosystem is definitely one, and Ethereum, like layer 2, even people talking about layer 3. How much more it can bring from the smart contract perspective, right? And NFT is kind of dead right now, but what else can bounce back from NFT is also another question.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Adam. I think there's promise in the expansion of the Bitcoin network. and on the layer 2 side should be able to remove the 10-minute confirmations. I think one other thing that hasn't been mentioned is maybe more nation states adopting Bitcoin as a national currency, which if some of these countries experience inflation or hyperinflation, it could come soon. I think that there's a short list of countries that may adopt it that could be good for Bitcoin on the global scale. I still see Tim Draper and some of these Bitcoin entrepreneurs touting Bitcoin's going to be 250,000. I've seen $180,000 predictions for one Bitcoin, and I think I believe that it will happen. It's a matter of when, not if, but the time frames always seem to keep extending and extending, and like, okay, maybe they say by next year, and then actually it's 10 years later. I'm curious on your thoughts on Bitcoin reaching those prices, and if it will ever happen, and if you have any idea when it might happen.
Obviously, as a registered entity personnel, I couldn't really, predict futures. Otherwise, I may have some issues on the compliance side. But just if you look at the historical trend, so I believe obviously every halving does have a narrower, a smaller multiples, right? Mm-hmm. Like the first couple of halving, you're looking at really astonishing numbers, right? It's going up so much percentage. But for the recent times, I believe it's less than 10 times, right? So it's, I don't know, actually it's probably more than 10 times. It's from $3,000 to $60,000, actually about 20 times, right? Mm-hmm. So as the Bitcoin price is higher, we naturally would actually expect the multiples will be smaller, right? Mm-hmm. However, there's one key element we have to remember is the Bitcoin adoption rate around the globe is probably low. Like it's probably less than 10%, could be even like 5%. Mm-hmm. So if we get like more adoption rate, we don't even need to worry about whether the people who have crypto now is going to buy more. Mm-hmm. The Bitcoin price just naturally goes up. Mm-hmm. So I think in the future, whether the price is going up or not is really about adoption, and of course also about the market conditions, whether people would have spare money to do it, but adoption will be the key.
Yeah, good insights, and I like how you played that. I'm really optimistic about other countries beyond North America and developing countries really adopting this technology in the same way that they don't have such a developed traditional banking infrastructure, that they're sort of able to leapfrog the banking 2.0 to banking 3.0 because there's not these huge conglomerates that are lobbying against it. I feel like across North America, that's why we've seen the rejection of the Bitcoin ETF or futures for so long, because the traditional system has a strong infrastructure over the last 100 years that's trying to protect what they have. And at the same time, I feel like they're also jumping into it, but they want to protect both sides. They play both sides of the game. So I'm optimistic about Central America, Latin America, especially with regards to Bitcoin as well. Not just those countries adopting Bitcoin as a legal tender, like we've seen in El Salvador, which seems to have positive effects on GDP and overall health of the economy. But what I've seen with the Bitcoin ecosystem, with regards to what you mentioned about layer 2s, side chains, DeFi, ordinals, I feel like a very strong presence of Latin America is pushing this Bitcoin narrative forward. And I did go to some Bitcoin conferences in Central America, and they have been working on Bitcoin smart contracts and side chains for years now. So I feel like that could trickle up towards North America as well and have a positive effect. So we'll see what happens as the industry continues to grow. But I really appreciate your insights on that. Now, we don't have a lot of time left, Adam, but moving forward with Virgo, you've mentioned the expansion and the acquisitions. Is there anything else that is up the sleeve of Virgo in day-to-day operations, or how are you going to continue to move forward into next year and grow in all avenues?
Sure. I think this is a question that has been, I guess, on top of mind for a lot of blockchain entrepreneurs, digital asset entrepreneurs. I think they just have to figure out where does it fit into, right? So I think with Virgo Group, so our main focus was to be focused on the centralized piece of the business, which is, trying to be able to be compliant, trying to be able to register across different countries, and trying to provide all kinds of crypto compliant related services, trading, asset management, insurance, potentially in the future, and also being able to helping on the retail, high net worth institutions, all kind of channels. So I think the focus for us would be still, getting that piece to be bigger, and having bigger market shares. But also, I'm also contemplating what are some of the innovative market lines, market opportunities we can capture. So we're paying really close attention to the new trend coming out. Like it can be like we're also considering like whether we're going to launch like a Virgo-backed VC fund, so we can help to build the ecosystems, right? So that's something we're also considering. So I think it's it's too early to say like where exactly we may become, but I think just in terms of the vision-wise, we want to be able to bring crypto to millions or like hundreds of millions of people to use it. So I think in order to reach that vision, the service provider have to be like getting to the bottom, have to provide consistent values. It's definitely not pump and dump, right? It has to be like more kind of consistent value-driven services. So that's what we have been consistently thinking. And obviously we want to be able to also weather all kind of market conditions so that we're not going to be like, broken like for one major disaster. We can be there for the next 5, 10, 20 years, right? I think that's what will make us become a potential conglomerate one day.
Exciting to see, and you're the hope of Canada for all crypto. So keep up the great work. Hope for the best and prepare for if Bitcoin, as you mentioned, potentially it doesn't do any crazy rises until a year after the halving. That's 2 years away. Crypto moves fast, but also when you run big corporations like this, there's cost to pay, and you have to sort of expect that Bitcoin couldn't go up and play both sides. So I'll definitely be watching Virgo's expansion because it's quite exciting, and it's great to see that a Canadian exchange is going international. For the viewers that are in Canada, what is the best way for them to test out the platform, try it, and also for the international users in the expansion, how can they trade and see what assets are on Virgo and use it?
Sure. Yeah. So the best way is definitely just go to virgo6.ca and just find, go through the registration process. And we recently will actually launch a very interesting new feature that actually combines a bit of gamification. So that's going to reward, active users, reward our VIP clients depending on their trading volumes, so that it's a little bit fun just to even stay in the APP. So that feature will be released before the Futures Conference this year. So it's going to be August, like the first week of August. We're actually going to release the whole gamification system to try to retain our customers and also give them kind of more power to earn even Bitcoin day by day. So I think that is coming live, and stay tuned. Hopefully you can be our users before our new feature is live.
Amazing. Well, all the best moving forward. With that, I will leave the links to virgocx.ca and the Virgo Group information and the social media links as well in the description box below. And I appreciate all your insights into the industry in Canada and internationally and with Bitcoin. Thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate it, and let's definitely follow up in the near future.
Thank you so much, Ashton, for having me.